Adele, I am so happy that you said yes to join me on this show. And when we were kind of talking and planning this whole thing out, you said, "I don't know how interesting my story is, but I'll tell it. I'll share it." But I'm excited because I find you to be very interesting, and that's what I love about doing this show is that it gives me an opportunity not only to learn more about the people I talk to in our community, but also tell other people about the great people that are here in our area and the great stories they have to tell. So I think your story is interesting, and it's still being written, I would say.
Yeah, I think so.
But first off, I want to ask you, you live in Allegan, but I just found out you're not originally from Southwest Michigan, but you would call Michigan home now as opposed to where you were before, right?
Are we not saying where I was from before?
Well, we'll say, Ohio. You're from Ohio.
I'm a Buckeye.
Yeah. It's one of our neighbors from the South that we don't like to talk to too much. It's like those relatives that you know you're there, you live close by, but you don't always want to visit them. Right. But no, nothing against Ohio. But you've lived in Allegan, but I will say you do have a very interesting story. And we crossed paths a few years back, and you were doing. And it was actually the title of the event. It was Adele's Alive Day Run. And that has to do with your time in the military. But let's start from the beginning, as the show's called. You're originally from Ohio. What was it like growing up in Ohio?
It was interesting. And I can say that now looking back on it. I grew up in Youngstown, which is kind of in the steel mill area by Pittsburgh. And, it was growing up, it was kind of a poor economic development area. The steel mills had closed. So, a lot of bigger manufacturers had moved out of the city. And it was very urban and very, I ran with some tough crowds in high school. And, because of that, I just have a very diverse background, I like to say. And I appreciate just a lot of different cultures and people because of that. Right. So I think I was really lucky to be exposed to a lot growing up in a town like that, in a city like that. So I was ready to get out when I turned 17. So
yeah, you certainly run into some challenges if you have different things like that. High school is such a interesting time for anybody. But what was Adele like in high school? Did you play sports, or were you a good kid or a bad kid?
I was a mixture. I was definitely a good kid. I got good grades. I followed the rules, so to speak. But I did definitely kind of have a bad streak, and kind of had some groups of friends that I'd go out and do fun things with, which I definitely wouldn't want my kids to probably do. But I got good grades. I played sports. I ran track, played volleyball. Was in all the clubs. So I kind of was like that. Just always doing everything kind of person. I've always been like that, I guess.
Yeah. And did you get in trouble a lot, or just have a couple of those moments?
Yeah, I had a couple close calls, a couple house parties where we're like sneaking out the back door as the police are coming in the front door, kind of close calls. But never got arrested, never, got suspended or anything like that. I have 3 older siblings, so I feel like I learned from all their mistakes. And good things and bad things. I learned it all from them. So
are you the youngest in the family then?
Yep. I'm the baby.
See, I am too. And I think that is the good and the bad part about the youngest kid is that the youngest kid learns from the mistakes from the parents, or from the parents and really the older siblings, but also it's bad because you learn all that stuff and you learn what not to do. But then you also know how to not get caught doing some of those things. So it can be a good and a bad thing and turn out bad for you.
Yep.
So did the house, did you ever have a house party at your house?
Oh yeah, I did. My parents, they left a 16-year-old home alone for a whole week and went to New Mexico on vacation.
What were they thinking?
I was the youngest. I don't know. They were like done. They were over it.
You'll be fine. Yeah, you can take care of yourself.
She could drive herself to school. She's got plenty of food. And so, yep, we had a house party, and the police were called because at the time, that's when cell phones were just coming out, and they were like really big and bulky. And a friend of mine left and was walking down the street holding his big bulky cell phone, and somebody thought he had a gun. And so the police were called, and it was one of those escorting people out the back as I was holding down the fort in the front. So, yeah, but they never found, my parents never found out.
Your parents never found out?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, if they knew, they never said anything to me.
So if they watch this, or if they listen to this podcast, they're going to say, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You did that on our trip to New Mexico?
There I go. You get.
Well, so tell me about this. So, you said, you ran with all kinds of different crowds of people, sports and, parties and things like that. And then what made you make the decision to join the military? Because you spent some time in the Army, which, by the way, thank you for your service for sure. But tell me this, were your siblings in the military? Did you come from a military family? What made you say, all right, I'm joining the Army?
So my dad was Army, and my grandfather and a couple uncles. I never had a thought to join the Army until my senior year. I knew I wanted to go to college, but I knew I didn't have a lot of money for college. So I knew it was going to be like a lot of student loan debt. And I was kind of just struggling with how I was going to pay. And my sister, my older sister at the time, was a manager for a gas station. And this recruiter used to come in every morning to get his coffee, this Army recruiter. And he was trying to convince my sister, who was in her 20s at the time, that she should join the Army. And she was like, I'm too old for that. Like, I'm too set in my ways. But I have a little sister that would be perfect. And so so I kind of blame it on my sister that it's really her fault that I joined. But I talked to the recruiter, and it just, I don't know, it made sense. Like I was, he helped me kind of see, like I kind of knew what I wanted to do with my life, but then it was like, did I really? And didn't have any money. So this just really kind of opened those doors of what I, needed at the time.
Yeah. Military certainly does that. I mean, you have that, the opportunities are there, the different skills that you learn, it's a good place for when you don't know exactly what you want to do, but you want to get a good education and learn new things. It's a good route to go. I have a nephew that is in the Air Force right now. He's going through training. And so he's doing the whole, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I have brothers that are in the military. So he was like, well, maybe this is the right path. So you joined right out of high school, right?
Yep.
So what was that like?
That was a huge culture shock. So that was my first airplane flight, was to go to basic training by myself at the age of 17.
Wow.
And go ahead.
Yeah, because you didn't get to go to New Mexico with your parents.
Yeah.
So, okay.
They left me behind.
First flight, you're getting out of Youngstown, Ohio. You're joining the military. Basic training was where? Fort
Jackson, South Carolina.
Wow. So not a too long of a flight. So your first flight wasn't too bad. But what was that experience of just flying on the plane for the first time?
I remember I was really nervous, and the gentleman, I don't remember his name, but the guy that was sitting next to me, he had the window seat, and I think he could tell that I was like really nervous.
Yeah.
He's like, have you ever flown before? And he was asking me all these questions. And so, this was like 98. This is back when it was still normal to talk to random people next to you on planes. It wasn't like so weird. And he ended up switching seats with me so I could have the window seat, because he said, like, you'll never get this experience again. He's like, so you should get the window seat. So I don't know who he was or where he ever went, but that was kind of a cool thing to remember about that.
Absolutely. And so you get into basic training, and was that something, because that's another thing that it's a struggle, because some people, they do really well going through the basic training, but sometimes it can be really tough for them, missing their family, but just it's a shock to them. But what was it like going through that? Did you learn new things just from that time in basic training?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was definitely a shock. prior to leaving, my recruiter worked with me on like the exercises and just like what to expect. But
Sure.
until you're in the moment and you have the drill sergeant yelling at you in your face, it's hard to really prepare for it. And I mean, I learned, you know, when I can't talk about it. I mean, I don't know how it is now because I know a lot has changed with the military,
Sure.
but back then, they were really good at really just stripping you down to the bare emotions and then building you back up, And there were a lot of people that couldn't manage it, and it was
Sure.
hard. There were nights where I'd just lay there in the bunk like, oh my gosh, like what am I doing? But before I had left, I had a family member tell me that it was okay to quit and that nobody would judge me if I came home early. And like, so I kept that in my head the whole time I was gone because I was like, I can't quit. Like I can't go back home because there's people expecting me to quit. So that was kind of like my driving force was like, I have to do this. I can't give up.
Yeah, that is definitely something. Yeah, you want to prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Because I wondered, because I know there's some people that it's that sort of roller coaster ride of just going through the basic training, or even their first couple of years in the military. Of I don't think this is the right thing for me. I don't want to do this. Once my term is done, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore. But you knew that, like you said, there was people that were kind of expecting, it's okay if you want to give up, but you didn't. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think too, like I learned pretty early on that you almost always have to be one step ahead of your drill sergeants. So like we didn't have alarm clocks, but like I kind of learned when they would come in and wake us up. And so I was able to train my body to wake up 10 minutes before the drill sergeants would come in. And I'd already have my bed made, my battle buddy stuff laid out for them because they were kind of a slacker. And, I would just like be like one step ahead. And I didn't do it to stand out. I did it so that like I could ensure that my bunk mates, like, that we were always like towing the line when we had to, because I didn't want us to ever be the last people at the line.
Yeah.
So that I learned that early on, just always be at one step ahead.
And that waking up early has stuck with you because I think I've seen you waking up at like 4:00 or something like that in the morning. And you're many years out of the military, but it still sticks with you. Now you have 2 daughters. Do you have them? Do you teach them some of the stuff that you learned, or do you still kind of follow that sort of military mindset of just the structure involved in that when you're raising your kids?
A little bit. I feel like I've relaxed a lot over the years. Probably my oldest probably got the brunt of that. We like in the military, you always cleaned all of your equipment, your room and all that on the weekend. Like that's like, your prep for the week. And that's something that I've like just has stayed with me all these years. And so like my oldest is 20 now. And like, she's the same way. Like, you clean on Saturdays, you do this on Sundays. And she definitely kind of picked that up from me. My youngest is definitely more, she just, she's a teenager. So she's kind of trying to find her own way and not always follow mom's path. But, they definitely, I think, have gotten their work ethic from me for sure. And their dad.
That's great. That's great. So you get out of basic training, and where do you go from there?
So then I went to Fort Lee, Virginia for what's called Advanced Individual Training, AIT. And that's where you learn like your specific job type. Okay.
And what was your specific job?
I was at the time it was called 77 Foxtrot, which is a petroleum supply specialist. So basically a fuel handler. So I can fill up any type of vehicle on ground, in the air. I can set up a gas station in the middle of nowhere if I have the equipment.
Wow.
Really practical, skills that really help me.
Absolutely. Yeah. You pump gas like an expert. So you did that, you learned all that stuff. And then you served overseas as well, right?
Yeah. Well, first I went to Fort Lewis, Washington. So I was stationed. So I went from East Coast to West Coast. And that's where I actually met my husband. He's also in the Army, and we both served out there in Washington for a couple years. And we actually got out of the Army when our contracts were up. We finished our contracts and moved back to Michigan. And not that I didn't love Michigan, but it's like I wasn't from Michigan. I didn't have any my own family here.
Plus,
and
you
so
had the Ohio Michigan
the whole Ohio
battle.
Michigan thing. There's that. But so I actually, as soon as we moved back, I immediately joined the National Guard. I was like, I miss it, and I kind of felt like I needed my own space where like I still had like a family, even though I had my husband's family, and that's great, but I needed my own thing to do in Michigan. So and that was in 2001, right when 9/11 happened. So
wow. And you joined the National Guard before 9/11.
Yeah,
right?
It was actually my paperwork for the National Guard was signed on 9/11 of 2001.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And so I knew when right when that happened, I already had a feeling something was going to go down before they, everything was announced and all that. So ended up going to Iraq in 2004, so a couple years later, but in the National Guard, not active duty. So.
Right. I was going to say that's not something that you expected when you signed that to be part of the National Guard. You just thought, okay, well, it's something military. It's something for me to do, something I know. So that totally changed things. But I want to get to that in a second. But so you met your husband, like you said, in Washington. Was he doing the same job as you, or did you just you knew him from the base?
No, we were in the same unit, and we were in different platoons, so different groups, but we did the same job. And he actually, like, I think I knew him before he knew me, and then he left for Honduras for 6 months, and then when he got back is when we kind of got introduced through a mutual friend, and that was it.
That's awesome. The rest is history on that. Wow.
Yeah, the rest is history.
So yeah, you joined the National Guard, and then you said 9/11 happened, and then that totally kind of changed what you were doing and what you were even planning to do. When did you have a choice when they said, "Hey, we're gonna send you to Iraq"? Did you have a choice to say, "No, I don't want to do that," or was it pretty much your plans had been made?
So leading up to the call in 2003, we knew that at that point, National Guard units were already being sent over. So like our unit, we kind of knew it was a matter of time before our number was called. And we actually got notification that a unit from the east side of the state in Howell was being activated, but they didn't have enough bodies. And so they were recruiting more people from from all over Michigan to go with the Howell unit. And one of my good friends that was in the National Guard with me, she called me and she's like, hey, a whole bunch of us are going to go. We're just going to do it. We'd rather just go with a Michigan unit versus getting pulled into another state's unit, something like that. So, I thought about it maybe for a couple minutes and I was like, okay, well, if all of my closest friends that I serve with currently are going to step up and do this, like I have to do it too, because I don't want to be left behind and go with people I don't know. So in essence, I did kind of volunteer to go.
Yeah. And that's what I'm kind of sensing is that's sort of your mantra is that, you're going to do it and you're going to either prove people wrong or, just you sound like a very confident person that's like, I got this. I'm making this happen. Right.
I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you, I actually just learned this the other day, that you have a Purple Heart.
I do.
And so, and the first time we met was during your Alive Day run that you were doing. And I can't remember how many miles did you end up running, because you were, it was a long period of time that you were gone.
Yeah. Yep. I ran for 12 hours and it was somewhere around 46 miles, give or take. I started in Berrien Springs, ran to Stevensville, then ran to St. Joe, then to Benton Harbor, then back to Berrien Springs, and then like past Berrien Springs, like into actual like the town of Berrien Springs.
Yeah.
And then back to the ops center. So it was like a big, huge loop.
Yeah. And I remember when you arrived, I was tired just from seeing you after you and the other, and because you had some coworkers with you and some other friends that were pumping you up, but they didn't run the whole time. They were, catching you for 4 or 5 miles at a time, but you were going. But I think the biggest surprise to me was the fact that you didn't just fall down at the end. I mean, you were like, hey, you want to talk? Let's talk about some stuff. And we did like a full interview, and you were, I mean, a little out of breath and you look tired, but not as much as I would think of somebody that ran that amount of distance. So was there a significance to the amount of miles that you were running?
Well, not the miles itself. So our goal was to raise $13,000. And so originally I was like, oh, I'll run for 13 hours. But then logistically, like 12 hours just made more sense, like for the workday and stuff, because we wanted to kind of end it at 5 p.m. So the goal was to raise $13,000 because at the time it had been 13 years since I was injured in Iraq. And so that day, May 25th, is my Alive Day. So like that's the day that like I always just kind of like take a moment to remember that I could have died, but I didn't. So let's celebrate.
Yeah. And were you at that moment when you were injured that you weren't sure if you were gonna, if that was, if that was going to be the end of your life or what?
Yeah, I mean, the day that it happened in Iraq, we got blown up, and I was fortunate that my injuries weren't serious.
Yeah.
But at the moment when like it was actually happening, you don't you lose all like sense of reality because explosions are very much like just disorienting. And my buddy that was in the truck with me, he lost his eye, which he's still alive and we still talk all the time. But at that day, like it just, between the explosion and driving through the explosion and getting him out of the truck and just all of that, it's like, it didn't sink until later that like, wow, this could have really been a lot worse because we were driving up onto a bridge when we got blown up. So like, and everybody else that was in the convoy that day, that was driving, that was behind us, they literally could not comprehend how we kept the truck on the bridge. Like I was driving on a curve when I lost my sight and like vision, everything. And I kept going and was able to pull over on the bridge. And I didn't you always just like, there's a lot of bad things that could have happened that didn't. So I try to be grateful for that.
Yeah. And you were the one driving?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how many people did you have in the truck with you?
It was just me and my battle buddy. So, but we have a semi truck. So it's just, like a 2-seater.
Yeah. And that's like I said, that's another thing about you that I've learned is that you're not just looking out for yourself. You're looking out for everyone that's around you. I mean, like in that moment, you have that, so disorienting, but first thing you did was, okay, all right, I'm okay. I'm going to see how my buddy's doing and make sure he's okay. So I think that's just an amazing story and wonderful that you're still around and be able to have this conversation with you. And it's just an amazing story. So, all right, now you're out of the military. Let's fast forward to that. It's 2006, you're out of the military.
Yep.
And then how old were your kids at the time?
So my oldest was 5 or going on 6. And then I was pregnant with my youngest. So that was kind of the decision to get out of the Army because I was pregnant and, I just, at the time, I still was really struggling a lot with what had happened to me. And I just wasn't sure. And the war was still going on. And I was like, I don't think I can do this again, especially with 2 kids. So, when my contract expired, I just decided just to go ahead and make the jump to the civilian world.
What about your husband? Is he still in the Army?
Yeah, he's still in. So he actually took a break. So when I was serving for my time in the National Guard, he actually held down the fort at home and just really managed everything. And then once I made the decision to get out in 2006, he was like, okay, I really miss it. I want to join. And so he's been in ever since, and he retires next year. So
wow.
Finally.
Awesome. So what would you say you learned from your whole time in the military, not just from your time in the Army, and then you did the National Guard, and then your experiences in Iraq? What would you say you learned? And what was the biggest lesson you learned from that?
I think the biggest lesson I've learned is that yes, I love my country, but I love the people I serve with more. Yeah. And I think that's really and even in my civilian life, I just really, those people that are in my inner circle, I will do anything I have to do to keep them safe, healthy, happy. And I think a lot of that came from the Army. You learn to just that's what comes first is the people around you.
Yeah, you forge those friendships that last for a long time, and I think that mentality helps you even create new fresh friendships and bonds from anything, from your where you work and other people you meet, parents of your kids' friends and things of that sort. So your kids are getting you're getting up there now. They're your youngest daughter's what? Still in high school, you said?
She'll be in high school next year. She's 14. So
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I did get a chance to meet your kids and your husband for a short amount of time when you did your Live Day run. And what sort of lessons do you teach your kids now that you say this is how we do things? Because I've noticed that you're not a hands-off parent, but you're not going to push your kids into, you got to do what we do, or you got to, this is the path you need to go. You kind of say, you create the roadmap.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So we've always taken the approach of like not being extremely stern. And then actually my kids joke that they're like, you've never set a curfew for us, but yet we've never come home like at 4:00 in the morning either. And so like, that just has what's worked for us. We've also instilled in our kids, we have 2 girls. And so I've been very passionate about making sure like that they know their self-worth, that they, know how to stand up for themselves to anybody, and that, we've really empowered them to do what makes you happy and love who you want to love, and just really making sure that they know like that, we're here for them, and whatever they want to do in life, we're going to support them.
Absolutely. What would you say is something that maybe most people may not know about you?
Something most people may not know about me. I actually, as a kid, so people that know me now wouldn't know this, but as a kid, I was actually overly sensitive, like the kind of like the crybaby when I was in elementary school. So like, seriously. And I think a lot of people that have only known me as an adult would never probably think that.
Right.
But I was like, I was always like the kid that's like, oh, I have allergies, like as I was crying because like somebody hurt my feelings for something. So
there had to, so there was definitely a turning point when you were younger to hit that switch of not doing that anymore. Because I don't sense that on the surface of you being like that, overly sensitive. You're usually, all right, let's do this kind of person.
Probably in high school, I would say I kind of turned that switch off. So.
And you keep yourself very busy. I know we mentioned you wake up really early, more earlier. I think you said this is a good time because your dogs are sleeping, probably because it's the middle of the day now for them if you wake them up. So what do you do on your free time? I mean, I noticed you do yoga and you do some other things too, right?
Yep. So I'm currently going to school to be a yoga instructor. So that's taking up a lot of my free time. Just it's a 200-hour certification process. So lots and lots of yoga. And then I'm also writing a book. So that's also what I do in my free time.
You're writing a book?
Yep.
Okay. So first, all right, let's get to the book in just a second. But the yoga, what made you decide that you wanted to be a yoga instructor? Because I know some people do yoga as a, especially being out of the military, maybe it's a time for you to feel at ease but also, feel flexible and all that stuff. But what made you say, all right, I'm going to take that step to being a yoga instructor?
Well, I think I've been doing yoga for several years now, and I love it. And I don't want to sound corny, but I kind of felt over the last probably 2 years, I felt compelled that I don't know, I need to be certified, not necessarily to make money from it. I'm actually planning on probably hosting free sessions for people because I'm really passionate about connecting people who've had trauma in their life with yoga. And I'm not a therapist, so I'm not going to come at it from like a counseling standpoint or therapy standpoint, but just, sharing how it's helped me cope with things. I think there's just a lot of people out there that I could help that can't get the help they need because of money. So I want to be able to, offer those services for free to people.
I think that's awesome. And so let's talk about this book. Many people love to read, but the writing of a book and telling, their story, but is this a autobiography or is this a work of fiction? Tell me about this book.
So it's a historical fiction. I actually came up with the story while I was in Iraq. So I've had this story in my head for almost 17 years. And it's about a female soldier that is taken prisoner in Iraq. And it kind of started with my battle buddy and I. Before he got injured, we would, drive for hours on these missions. And so to keep ourselves awake, we would tell each other stories. We would just make up stories. And so I just thought about, I was like, what if I got captured? What would happen? And I just started telling this story of this female soldier, and it's just evolved over the years. And I'm almost 60,000 words into the story, and I'm maybe a third of the way through it.
Wow. So this is
Game of Thrones book.
Yeah. So this is going to be possibly something that you think could be like a series, or it's just going to be a really, really thick book.
Yeah, I don't know yet. That's where I really don't have a lot of experience with. I mean, I took writing classes and I love to read, but I don't, I'm not an expert. So I'm just right now I'm just getting it all out of my head, and then I figure I'll probably hire somebody to help me edit and sort it out and see if it should be multiple books or if it should just be one huge 10,000 page book or something.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's I'm excited. So you're at what would you say, a third of the way through, the halfway point?
I'm very closer to halfway. Right now I have it into 3 parts, and I'm almost done with part 2. So yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Wow, I can't. How long has it taken you to get to the point you are right now? So what do you think the timeline of book, at least roughly done, is?
I'm hoping, my goal is to be done writing this year. It took me 17 years. Well, I started it last year, and then I kind of walked away from it because I don't know, during COVID, you would think I would have had the time to write, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And then over Christmas break, this past Christmas, I sat down for 10 days and just hammered out just so much.
Yeah, I think I saw you doing that and saw some of the progress, and I think that's amazing to see. And I'm looking forward to that book. You might have to come back on and talk to me, and we may just go and talk about that story, because I think whether they be fiction or nonfiction, everybody has an amazing story. And even if they're stories you come up with while you're driving in a truck somewhere, I think is awesome as well. But will you say that your story is more interesting now after having this conversation with me?
I guess so. I guess I'm not that boring.
No, I don't think you're boring at all. And I think I appreciate you taking some time to talk to me, but I'm looking forward to that book. What's that book going to be called? Does it have a working title yet?
It does. It's called Always Forward.
Ooh, yeah. I love that. Well, I look forward to talking to you again sometime, Adele, but thank you so much for taking some time today to chat with me.
Yeah, absolutely, Johnny. I appreciate it.